Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Creating Conscious Relationships. I am Catherine.
I am Jon.
And we are excited to be connecting with you guys tonight to talk to you about the contribution within relationships. Just making sure we are live here, so just give me a moment. There we go. We are live. So,
here we are once again, another week.
Yes.
Hope everybody had a great week. Very excited to talk about the contributions that everyone makes in relationships.
Yes. And it's something we've been discussing throughout the week, on and off. And I think a lot of times when it comes to contribution in relationships, a lot of times what we see within partnerships is we go, I've been doing this, I've been giving this, I've been, I do the dishes and I do the laundry and I do the this and that and whatever, and you're just doing the A, B, C, D, E, whatever it might be. And then it starts to become a battle within relationships. And sometimes those battles turn out to be kind of war zones when we're not taking the opportunity to kind of sit down and really look at what is the contribution that we've been giving within the relationships. And I know I just listed off a bunch of chores that we could say, you've been doing this and I've been doing this or whatever, but it's also looking at emotionally, what have you been contributing to the relationship? And intellectually, what are you contributing? Financially, what are you contributing? Spiritually, what are you contributing? Sexually, what are you contributing? And understanding that for anybody, there's perceived good and bad contributions that we all make to relationships.
Yeah, really, the contributions are good, bad, and different, and you have to see how you're contributing, in all aspects of that. How are you contributing to the good things? How are you contributing to the bad things? How are you contributing to the physical things? How are you contributing to the non-physical things? And how is your partner or whoever contributing as well?
Yeah.
And acknowledging those contributions.
Yeah. It can be so easy for each of us to see through the lens of ourselves what we've been contributing. We know how hard it is to say do the dishes every night or prepare the meals every night, or to be the emotional kind of holder for everything that's happening within the family unit or whatever. So if we're not having an honest conversation with our spouse, with our partner, with whoever it is that we're in relationship with, about how much we feel we're giving in the relationship, and then being willing to listen to what they are also contributing to that relationship, it can make things feel like they're out of balance. And when we think things are out of balance, a lot of times what we start to do is point the finger at the other person saying, you've got to be doing this, or you owe me. That's another huge one. You owe me because look at how much I've given to you. And in this universe, in the world, when we go up into like kind of the cosmos of everything, there's always an equalization that's happening. There's a yin, there's a yang, and it all equalizes itself out. And so you might be, say, doing the majority of the household chores, but maybe they're doing the majority of the finances, or...
Yeah, really, I think it doesn't really matter. There's never an IOU. The IOU will always come back, right? Like, people get caught up in this, well, I do all of this, and I do all of this, and this person does this, and they always look for this evenness or this balance of, no, it's always got to be equal. Folks, no, it doesn't. It will find its way to level. It always does. Just like water, it will find a way to level out. Don't look for those, look for the contributions and pay homage to that person contributing and how they're contributing. But don't look for ways to point the finger that it's not fair or that's not fair. It will.
Yeah.
And you just have to trust in that.
And I think it is important that you do have these conversations. We were doing some research this week on this topic.
Yeah.
And one of the things they talked about was these small cuts in relationships. So it's almost like a little paper cut that you get, right? Where maybe you're stewing because you're doing the dishes and you thought they should help do the dishes. And so it's a little small paper cut that you're now holding on your emotional heart. And it's okay if it happens once, it has an opportunity to heal and then you move on. But if it happens again and again and again, all of those small cuts start to lead to like a lot of pain. And it's so important that when that first small cut happens, that you take that opportunity to have a conversation about this is what's coming up for me. And again, I know we've talked about this in the past and we're going to be talking about it again, because it's always the ego and or the wounded self that's coming up to go, hey, you owe me. Hey, this is causing me pain. Hey, this is making me angry. You've done this. And of course, we look at the other person and we go, you're the problem here. But what they're really doing is triggering a reaction within us because of some underlying emotional issue that is actually going on inside of us. So if they're not helping with the dishes, and that's like that small cut that you have, it's an opportunity for you to go underneath that and go, what does this actually mean to me? Because it's the act of doing the dishes, but underneath that act of doing the dishes, it might be they don't care how tired I am, or they don't appreciate how much effort I'm putting in. And so then we can look at those two aspects and go, okay, so they don't care how tired I am. What does that mean? They don't care about me. You know?
It's really interesting because in that instance, you're creating your own issue. You know what I mean? You're creating that problem or that feeling where, oh, they're not, but you're the one that's creating that.
Yeah.
Not them. They're not doing the dishes, no. And they're not, paying attention that you're doing the dishes. No, they're not. They're doing their own thing. But you're creating the animosity inside of you because you're doing the dishes.
And really what happens is as you're doing that act of doing the dishes and you've got this story that's brewing, so there's a part of you that feels unappreciated or a part of you that feels like nobody cares for you. And so that part comes up and then it starts speaking. And when it starts speaking, it creates an entire story around doing the dishes. Mm-hmm. And so as you're doing the dishes, now you're stewing, you're starting to get angry and you're thinking, they don't even care about me, they don't appreciate me. And then what that ego part or that wounded part starts to do beyond that is it goes, they also didn't care about me here, and they didn't care about me here, and they didn't care about me here, and they didn't appreciate me here, and they didn't appreciate me here, and they didn't appreciate me here. And so now we've got this entire story that's been built and it becomes solidified. And then every time we see our partner or that person we're in relationship with, we kind of cast that story onto them to say, this is what you're doing. And if we're not speaking about it, if we're not saying, hey, I've been feeling really tired this week and doing the dishes is just one thing that I could really use some help with, and the partner to like engage in that conversation and go, hey, I'll help you with the dishes. Because chances might be that they're going, I'm exhausted from work. It's been a really stressful week. I've got 0 sleep, or I've been really stressed about this or that or whatever it might be. When you have those conversations and you can understand what is the actual truth here, not what is the story I've made up in my mind. What is the actual truth of what's going on here? Sometimes it's miscommunication where literally you're communicating like this. And so that creates a whole brand new story. And sometimes it's just a complete misunderstanding of what their actions or non-actions are meaning for you.
Yeah, it limits the storytelling, right? I mean, when you actually communicate, I know we've talked about this. It's all about communication, folks. You sitting there telling your story about something that's probably not true and getting upset about it while you do the dishes dissolves really quickly with just a, hey, I need some help here.
Yeah. Yeah. It literally can just diffuse an entire situation, but you have to catch yourself. When those stories start to come up, you have to be willing to catch yourself and ask yourself, is this actually true? Is this belief that I'm not cared for, is this the most truest thing for me to believe in? And of course, your mind is going to go, yes, it's true because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I've got all this proof, all these times they didn't care about me.
And how many of those times was it you making up that story?
Yes.
Right? Like, it's another one of, did you fact check this?
Yeah. And fact check would be to go to your partner and say, hey, I felt like you didn't care about me in this instance. Is that true? Did you stop caring about me? Most likely the answer is going to be no. And they might look at you kind of dumbfounded and be like, no, how did you get that? Why are you coming at it from that point of view? But that's where that conversation, having that communication really comes in handy. And to be able to be vulnerable enough to go, wow, I'm really feeling underappreciated, or I'm cared for. I really feel like we're not connected the way that we used to be connected, or whatever it might be. It takes vulnerability to do that. And it also takes them vulnerability for you to be able to go to them and say, hey, these are all the things that you've been doing to contribute to my unhappiness right now. Yeah. And for them to be willing to listen, to take that in, and for the person who's bringing it forward to give them the space to process what you've now told them, and then come back to have that resolution.
Yeah, and on the other side of this, because we're kind of sitting at like a negative spin on the contribution piece, but there, on the other side of that, and the positive contributions to the relationship, some people get envious, and that's kind of put a negative spin on it. Get envious because, oh, I'm contributing, or I've done this, or I've monetary, whatever the case may be. But give credit to, give that gratitude. No, you know what? You are an amazing partner. You have done these great things, and just reinforce that. Yeah, I see you. I see the contributions you have made, and even acknowledge your lack. If you see a lack in your contribution, you know what? Yeah, I dropped the ball on that one. I'm gonna do better. I gotta do this, or I gotta do that. But see each other's contribution as well as your own, and see where you need to do more or you've done less.
Yeah, I think it's great to have those reflection periods together in that partnership or within that relationship, but also as an individual, to take that time to reflect and ask yourself, where have I dropped the bucket? And where have I given less than what I could have done? Where have I drawn a line that I said, I'm not doing that anymore because I've done it a million times? And would it be the most awful thing if I was to continue to do that? And I get it that sometimes we get fed up. Sometimes we get overwhelmed. We, get tired. We're human. And especially when you're raising families, or you're taking care of businesses, or working,
Life.
There's lots of things that are contributing to what your personal energy is, and how much you're able to give and how much you're able to contribute. But to kind of take those steps back to allow yourself to reflect and really ask yourself, is what I'm doing, does that feel like enough for me? And is it working for my partner, or is it working within this relationship? And to have that conversation with each other about, what do we want this contribution to look like? Because ultimately, what you should be doing in that partnership or in a relationship is holding a vision together of where you want your lives to be. And if the actions that you're currently taking, the contributions that you're currently putting in, are not actually in alignment with what it is you're wanting to create down the line, then it's a time to kind of go, how do we shift this? How do we fix this?
Yeah, and another thing I would say is look for the opportunities where there is none, I guess. Sometimes it's just little things that we can contribute to a relationship that have a huge impact. It could be just doing the dishes. It can be just making coffee, or just whatever.
Leaving a little note, or...
Yeah. But look for those opportunities. Don't ask for those opportunities, I guess. I mean, it's always good to have the discussion with your partner of, hey, how can I be better? Or how, it's kind of like a performance review. What am I doing wrong? Blah, 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 blah. But when you can find those little pieces and just put them in, it heightens your relationship and whatnot.
Yeah. And one of the big things that kind of comes up when it comes to contributions is a lot of times, especially in long-term relationships, we collect data from the past where our partner has not, say, shown up the way we wanted them to, or didn't act in a way that we wanted them to, or maybe did some actions that were hurtful and painful towards us. And when we're stepping into conscious relationships, it can be very easy to go, yeah, but remember this time in 2007, and this time in 2009, and this time in 2012, or whatever it might be. And we've got these kind of collected data points of times where they couldn't be that. And yes, that's accurate. That was something that happened in the past. But can you be willing to draw that line in the sand? If it needs to be brought up again, it's okay if it needs to be brought up again. But to draw that line in the sand to go, okay, from this moment forward, this is what we're going to work on. This is what we want this relationship to look like. And it goes into that forgiveness. Forgiving your partner for who they've been in the past when they were completely unconscious. Forgiving yourself for who you were in the past because you were also completely unconscious, right? When we've got two wounded people coming together in a relationship, often what they're doing is they're reacting from their wounds. They're creating from their wounds. They're loving from their wounds. It's actually just this week, the song Say Something by, what was his name? No, that's a different guy. Great Big World and Christina Aguilera. They had done a duet called Say Something. And one of the lines in the song is, I was just learning to love, just learning to crawl. Or just learning to love, just starting to crawl. And to me, when I reflect on our relationship with each other, when we first got into relationship with each other, of course, you're all full of love and all this exciting feelings because it's a brand new relationship, and we all go through that, fall in love. And then you kind of get past that honeymoon period, and now you've got these wounds that are showing up. You've got different personalities that are showing up, different attitudes towards life that are showing up. And ultimately, what you're doing is you're learning how to love each other. And because we're just learning how to love, if you can imagine all these wounded parts that couldn't receive love in the way that you wanted when you were a child are now in a relationship, and they're just now starting to learn how to love. They're these baby parts. They're just learning how to crawl. They're just learning how to love. And we wouldn't look at a baby and, get mad at a baby for not being able to crawl right away. We give them permission to not know, and we don't tend to do that in our relationships with each other. We demand, you must know how to love me right off the hop. You must know every single trigger that I have, every single wound that I have, and whatever. And often we don't find out what each other's wounds are until we're in the middle of an argument and we understand, oh, if I say this to you, you're going to react in this way. And if I react to you in this way, then you're going to shut down and you're going to get emotional over this and whatnot. And we start to learn how to have those, a more deeper love for each other, a deeper connection with each other. But again, it's all just learning. And we've been, I'd say, working on a conscious relationship for about the past 5 years. Although we unconsciously were working towards a conscious relationship with each other from the beginning, we just didn't really recognize what a conscious relationship was, and it took a lot of failure.
Well, we knew it was different, right? We knew it was more than what other relationships were. We knew it was different than what we were seeing. But you made a good point about past, and you just remember that every day is a new day, right? And every day we're kind of reborn. And I always, yes, remember the past and the lessons that you've learned, but try to love from the day, right? Take it from, okay, it's a new day. I know all of this, but today is going to be a different day, and today is a new day, and anything's possible.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to love from today, not from what the past has been, just love from today.
Well, we get caught up in a lot of these stories that, okay, and then that our memories, and especially as we get older, our memories aren't that good. We think we're replaying these memories, you did this or you did that. In actuality, it's probably not the case, but that's the pieces that we remember. you can dissolve that. Just, yeah, let go of it. What is the need of it? There's no need of it. You can start today with that same person that you love, and you can erase all of that. And what is it gonna, what is the difference? It's only gonna make things better.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And
you bring up a good point, because when we've collected a lot of memories that are maybe not favorable of the other person or favorable for ourselves, then we can just be contributing day after day our anger to a relationship.
It's just stacking
our hurt
up, right?
To our relationship. And we could go, no, it's them. They're the ones who are contributing this. Well, if you're the one that's holding on to the anger, or you're the one that's holding on to the hurt, or you're the one that's, ready to fight everything, all you're actually contributing to this relationship now is kind of like a fighting energy, right? There's no space for love. There's no space for forgiveness. There's no space even for them to show up differently, because all we're doing is attacking, right? And looking for someone to validate that our experience is correct. All we need to do is validate it for ourselves. Like, yeah, that was painful for me. Yeah, that made me sad. Yeah, that made me angry. But now I'm going to be willing to let it go. I'm going to be willing to forgive. I'm going to be willing to love you from this moment right now. Let me rediscover who you are. Because my mind has told me all these stories of all these things that you're not, or I don't want you to be. So let me remember who you are right now in this moment.
And this doesn't just apply to partners. This applies to all of relationships. It applies to, your relationship with your mother, your father, your children. It's the same. You can start from today, let all of that stuff go. All that pile, it's like dirty laundry. Yeah, it'll get done, man. And once it's done, okay, guess what? It's going to come again.
Yeah.
But you know it, so just start from today.
Yeah. And of course, we can't make other people change, but we can change how we react.
That's right.
To other people. And so in partnership, if you're saying, well, they always do this. It's always this, always this, always this. Okay. How about you change how you react to that? If it's something that's always pissed you off, what if you just say, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That was nice. Or whatever it might be. It's allow yourself to react differently. See how that can make a change. There was a book a few years ago. I think back in 2009, it was a big deal. It was called The Love Dare. And it was essentially 30 days of these love dares that you did within a relationship to try and improve a relationship, especially for those who were like kind of getting close to a point of separation or divorce or whatever. And there was a movie that was made about it as well. And essentially this guy does this 30-day dare with his wife to try and reconnect them together. And what ends up happening is they end up reconnecting together, even though they had been on the verge of divorce. And all it took was for him to show up differently, and then it shifted the entire dynamic of the relationship. So it doesn't need to necessarily be two people who are showing up differently. One person can be enough to make that shift, to make that change. Now, if you have both of you that are like, hey, we've got to work on this relationship because the way it's been going has not been ideal for either of us, then what an awesome opportunity for you guys to consciously co-create a new relationship together.
It reminds me of I know we've probably talked about this quote before. It's losing that blame, right? Who's at fault? Who's at fault? Who owns this? Who losing that. And again, partners, family members, parents, nobody's at fault. There is no fault.
Yeah.
It is just a series of events we're all just trying to work through.
Yeah. And for anybody at home that's like, well, wait a second, this person was at fault. They were to blame for this or that. We can look at that person and we can go, okay, so these were the actions that they took. But what were all of the circumstances that led up to those actions that they took? So now you've got other people that are at play too. So maybe you've got their parents at play, or their siblings, or a childhood teacher, or whatever. It's all at play. So do we look at the teacher, the parents, or the siblings? Let's say we're going to look at the parents and go, now the blame's on the parents. Well, the parents could only be what they were based on other people's actions, right? And so we have to go, okay, so it's beyond their parents. Now let's look at this next set of parents, teachers, siblings, etc. And that's where we say there is no blame, because every single action that we take is a result, a consequence, or a reaction to something that we've already experienced. Perhaps we haven't had an opportunity to heal.
Yeah. And how that relates to contribution. And this is where, some of these things that if you have, brought up a point of, somebody's not contributing in a certain way, one of those reasonings could be why they're not contributing in a certain way. And it's not their fault. They may not even know that is the case. We all come with an operating system that's not perfect. And sometimes we need to add these pieces to that. And that contribution piece may not be there. And I'm not saying altogether. I'm just saying if your expectation is, this person is always going to do the dishes and they don't, that's a faulty part in that. Yeah. That's a false expectation. But
yeah. And so again, just having those conversations with your partner or with your child, with your parents or whatever, about the contributions that you're putting into the relationship, the contributions that you're willing to put into the relationship, and also if you have contributed to the pain of the other person or to challenges for the other person, taking ownership for that. It's something that we don't like to do. We often want to look at everybody else as being the problem and not really vocalizing how we've also contributed. And it's one of the things that we've started to do in our relationship is if there's a painful point that I've got coming up that I feel like, this was hurtful that you had done this to me, then I'm asking him, what is the equalization here? Where have I also done this to you? Where have I not heard what you had to say, or where have I not held space for you? And it's not that I'm looking to take on blame or responsibility or anything, but it's to help me kind of soften the ego part of me that's going, he always does this. I want to soften that, to humble it enough to make it realize that, hey, I'm capable of this too, because we all are.
I was going to say, we've had some very good discussions about how our negative contributions. And if you think that you haven't negatively contributed to somebody's life at some point in your life, you're not of this planet, because we all have. It's just, it happens. When you have the moment to sit down with a partner, with a loved one, and review that and kind of go, hey, let's, it's not comfortable. By all means, it's not comfortable, but it is very rewarding. Sit down and have the conversation about how have I contributed negatively to your life or your journey.
Yeah.
It's a gut check for both people, and it's hard, but it's so rewarding.
Yeah. And it's not like you've done this or you've done this. Like, it's not like an angry conversation, or it doesn't need to be an angry conversation, but it's an opportunity to kind of unload the heart of the hurts that have been compiled over the years or over time and space. And when you kind of get those out on the table and each person is able to receive that, and again, not in a negative way, but to just go, okay, yeah, you're right. I did do that. And that was hurtful. Because a lot of times what we're actually doing is we're recreating our wounds from our childhood. We're recreating those circumstances, trying to figure it out. And what I find interesting is a lot of times the person that we received the most pain from, that tends to be the person we emulate the most as we're hurting other people. Okay? And hard pill to swallow. We don't want to think of ourselves as being that person that hurt us the most, but it's often how we learn to project that pain onto someone else. And so allowing yourself to be honest with yourself about, yeah, I have hurt others. I have hurt the person that I love. It's not something that, we often talk about. we often go, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this in a good way. I want to be seen in all the good that I've done. But not often that we go, I really broke their heart when I said this. I really broke their trust when I did this, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and although it is constructive to name the things, just having the awareness, just having the awareness that I have negatively contributed to your life. I understand that. There's no way I'm getting away from that fact. As long as you can admit that and say that, hey, if you can give examples, that's great. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but it may be. It's up to the individual.
Yeah.
But, it was funny too that as you're going through this process, it is gut-wrenching. It is very difficult. But again, I said it's very rewarding. There is a transitional period though. Yes. We found this out, that it's, there'll become a time where you have these discussions and then you're both like in this moment of silence. And it's like, you feel like you're kind of lost. You feel like, okay, I don't feel bad. I don't feel good, but I don't really feel like...
It's like an awkwardness of discomfort.
We're not connected, or I don't feel like there's a distance. And sit with that. It's not a bad thing. It's an uncomfortable thing, but it's not a bad thing. And really what it is that little me, big me, being your conscious or your ego and your divine self having that conversation. It's that argument. It's that, no, but this is right. No, but this is right. It's going on in here. And they're trying to level them. They're trying to find that balance.
Yeah. It's like an integration between the divine self and the wounded self. And that kind of the balance or the integration of the two for you to, because essentially when you're doing this, you're up leveling your relationship. You're up leveling your understanding of yourself. And even when you're talking about how you've negatively contributed to a relationship, that's about bringing that shadow self forward. Right? And we talk about the shadow self a lot in the spiritual world. And essentially the shadow self is the parts of us we want to keep hidden. It's the parts of us we don't want anyone to see because we think it's the most unlovable thing about us. So we hide it away and we shame it and we say, this doesn't belong to me. And so we might, go, I'm always honest. And that's the light self that's out here. I'm always honest, always honest, always honest. Well, there's a shadow self that lies. Right? And then in your relationship, you might tell a little white lie and you think it's not a big deal, but a little white lie leads to a bigger white lie and a bigger white lie until it's a big, big lie. And that's that shadow self that if you bring it up into the relationship to go, yeah, look, I've done this, and let's illuminate this with this light. Let's talk about it. Let's, I don't want to say judge it. And I don't want to say it's not about beating yourself up. It's not about beating your partner up. It's about going, yeah, there's this thing. Yeah. And this thing has been this heavy thing in our relationship for a while. We need to talk about it. And sometimes we don't understand it. Sometimes we don't understand why do we keep coming back to this same pattern. But let's put it out on the table again. Let's dissect it a little more.
Because you're both in your head having that little me, big me conversation. And when I say that, it's like, there's one side that's saying you're never enough. Yeah, you did all these things. You're horrible, blah, blah, blah. And then there's this other side going, no, but you're good. And this is just noise. This is just static. And then, and both people are having that conversation in their head instead of having that conversation between each other and just putting it out there.
Yeah.
And going through that motion.
Yeah.
Telling stories that are or are not true.
Yeah. And I mean, you can have those conversations with each other too. Yeah. There's a part of me that really wants to forgive you right now. There's a part of me that recognizes this is all okay. And there's another part of me that's like, this is absolutely not okay. And it's afraid that if I forgive you, you're going to do all these actions all over again. And so bring that all up out to the surface that there's just these voices and we all have them. It doesn't mean you're schizophrenic or crazy or anything like that. We all have these voices. We all have these parts
The inner little me.
Yes, the inner little me, that it's talking constantly. But there's this divine part of you that knows, hey, I love this person. Hey, I want to have a good relationship with this person. It's often that is keeping the relationship together, even when both of your little me's are like turning their backs on each other. There's a great painting by an artist, and I don't know who it is, but essentially it's got these two adults that are like in stone, and they're turned away from each other, but inside each of them is like this inner child that's reaching out to each other. And so they got the adults' backs facing the opposite ways, but the inner child is like, it's looking to connect. It's wanting to connect. And when you can remember that in your own relationship, that even in those moments where there has been trouble, and you're talking about these negative experiences and stuff, this inner child has been looking to connect. So giving them that opportunity to connect. What is it that they were really wanting? Was it love that they felt they were missing? And you might go, I loved them so much. I did everything I could to show them I love them. Okay. But part of them was still feeling unloved. And that's okay. Doesn't mean you failed in loving them. It just means there was a void in them that was so big that perhaps you couldn't actually fill all of it. And then to understand that and to really hold on to that wound of just, you are so loved. Because here's the thing, spewing our anger all over someone, even yelling, I love you, don't you understand that? They're not going to receive that as love, and it can be difficult.
No, I'm just taking all of this back to the original, like talking about contributions, right? And it really is important that communication be your key to these discussions.
Yeah.
And when I say communicate, it is open as you can be. I mean, we again have these little conversations going on in our head, but bring bring those conversations out to the real world and talk to the people that you want. If you are having a conversation about contributions, and if it is not maybe a difficult subject to talk about, communicate that and continue to communicate it. It's not something we've not got it right the first time. It's try again, keep trying this. And the way I kind of put it is like, it's like picking a lock. You get one number right. Okay, that's good. Okay, let's build off of that. And you try the next number, and maybe it's not the same day. It could be months, years down the road, but keep trying. You know what's behind that door. You know that there's greatness behind there. You know that's an amazing person. You're going to continue to try to want to figure out that combination because you want to unlock them. And they should want to do the same for you.
Yeah. And I think even just acknowledging, going back to what you were just saying, but acknowledging, hey, this is a difficult conversation. And in a difficult conversation, we both have to be aware, or both parties need to be aware, that in a difficult conversation, there's a good chance the ego is going to show up, right? And there's a good chance there's going to be hurt feelings and discomfort, that there's going to be hard truths that are being shared. Now, if you're both going into a conversation and you go, okay, we know this is going to be difficult, how can we continue to love each other through this difficult conversation? And if you've got a part of you that's kind of showing up and going, you did this, and it's like screaming in your head, whatever, I would encourage you to just go, so there's an ego part of me that's showing up, and it's really wanting to say this, and vocalize it, right? It might be truth, it might not be truth, whatever, it doesn't matter. But recognizing it's not my divine self, it's not my heart that loves you that's saying this, it's this hurt part of me, this part of me that's still holding on to this pain because that pain hasn't been healed yet. It needs to be spoken. And then the partner in that is just holding that space for it. It's not going, no, you're wrong. It's going, okay, yeah, I remember that. I did do that. Whatever, you're correct. Or I don't even know if you're correct. It is.
It just is. Right?
Yeah, it's acknowledging that pain. Because a lot of times the ego It is screaming from a place of, I don't feel loved, I don't feel heard, I don't feel seen, and I don't feel validated. And if you yourself can see yourself, see yourself, validate yourself, hear yourself, and love yourself, you can heal that wounded part within you. The same is true with partnership. If your partner can see the wound, hear the wound, validate the wound, and love you within that wound, it can heal that wound. But it's not going to happen if there's always a finger being pointed or arguing happening or no one taking accountability or going, hey, it wasn't like that. So it was like that for the person who was experiencing it. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing, and I know that we've done it, and I encourage other people to do it, is voice that right out about, hey, this is coming from an ego place. This might get ugly. It's kind of like a warning that we use. It's like, okay, this is coming from this space. So, put on your armor, put on whatever you need to do, because here comes the blast.
Yeah.
And usually it's taken, this is just how it's coming out. But at least you're giving that warning. You're not rah, 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 whatever, spewing whatever stuff that's coming out of your mouth.
And I want to say too, it, like, even when we give each other the warnings of, hey, I'm triggered right now, this is my ego, it's a difficult conversation, whatever it might be, we're not coming at each other to attack each other. It's going, so this thing happened, it brought this up in me, I'm feeling this way. That's all it is. Yeah. And it's often because you had this action or I had this action or this thing happened or whatever, right, that's caused this kind of switch, and that ego kind of flips on and it's like, oh, hey, I've got something to say here.
It's my turn.
Yeah. And so when you can recognize that and you can have those kinds of conversations with each other, you start to understand where that ego has kind of taken form within the person, which gives you an opportunity to love that person that you're having that conversation with that much more. And you might have your own ego that's activated. And we just had that experience this week where I was sharing from my ego, and then he actually looked at me and went, okay, so my ego's been activated. And I'm like, okay. So it's an opportunity though for me to go, okay, let me give space for your ego now. What does your ego need to say, or what does your ego need to do in order to process this? And it's not attacking because, oh, this is my space for my ego to freak out and have a temper tantrum, because that's a lot of times what we're told now is that if we bring a problem to the table, someone else can't bring a problem to the table. That is them trying to take away from what your problem is. And I call bullshit on that. Because if you're bringing a problem forward, it's perfect doorway for them to bring their problems forward as well, for those egos to be able to kind of have their voice heard. And it's not that they're taking the fire away from the other person or taking the expression away from the other person, because often what it is it's a buildup, right? And do you remember that game? You're going to play it with me for a second, but do you remember this game from like when you're a kid, and then you've got to have your other hand on, and then we go like this, and you start going faster and faster and faster. And if you can imagine, I'm going, hey, this is my ego. And then he's like, okay, here's mine. And then we go like this and we start to stack it. If we start going like this, all we're doing is having a fight with each other. But if we allow ourselves, each person, have a turn, and stack it up. I don't actually understand what the purpose of that game
You're just fighting with yourself. You go too fast, right? Like you're actually fighting against the purpose. But again, bringing that back to our original topic, that was our contribution this week, was to our relationship to each other and to our communication. Was we willingly sat down, kind unbeknownst to us that we were going to have this conversation. Yeah. But we did. And again, we walked away from that going, wow, this was amazing. Yes, it was painful, or yes, it was, it turned all these different things, but it was like... Well,
it's interesting because what we were talking about actually was what the topic was going to be for tonight. And we started talking about contribution within relationship. And what I had been saying was like the kind of difference between men and women in relationships and the roles that women play, and how often women feel completely overwhelmed within all those roles, and men, a lot of times their role is to go to work, make money, and come home, and that's it. Where women are, you know, doing childcare and child rearing and housework and perhaps business stuff or whatever it might be. And so a lot of times it kind of looks like
An imbalance. Yeah.
an imbalance.
Yeah.
And how that's kind of played out within our relationship with each other, but where I have a lot of female clients who also feel this kind of overwhelming stress of everything that they've had to contribute to the relationship, and then feeling like they're not getting a whole lot back in ways of emotional connection or intimacy or whatever it might be. And what was interesting is, as we were doing some research on this, and I was talking before about the kind of small cuts, was it said that women, after child rearing is done and life starts to slow down, is a lot of times they end up feeling like they've lost their identity, because they identified as mom and homemaker for so long, but as the kids grow up and they move out of the house and, you know, they're all starting their own journeys and stuff, that moms kind of lose their sense of who they are, and we call that empty nest syndrome. But it made me question if that anger that's showing up and that disappointment that's showing up and the sadness is showing up and all these big emotions, if at that point, because there's no real sense of identity that's left, if the anger becomes the identity and the grief becomes the identity, and they start to operate from that only and think, this has been my whole life. I've wasted all of my life and it's all just been this kind of shit thing or whatever, which is to me an opportunity for the women to go back within themselves to go, okay, who am I beyond what I've contributed to my family? You know, because a lot of times it is between 40 to 60 years old that women go through this kind of life change, and men go through their own life change as well. Yeah. And Wayne Dyer actually talks about that in his movie The Shift, where he says, you know, at this kind of midlife point, a lot of women, what they do is they start to shift in their identity and they start to go on the pursuit of self when they're 40 to 60 years old, finding out who they are in this world now, because they're no longer looking to please the family, their parents, their husband, or their children. Where men actually tend to do a shift from going, the career is the most important thing, to now I want to contribute to the family. And it was a study that was done on tens of thousands of people, and all men tend to go, I need to focus on family now when they hit around 45 to 65 years of age. And women tend to go, I am going to find myself now. And so there's a dichotomy that kind of happens within that in relationships as well. So where the man is now ready to face the woman and go, you know, how can I contribute to our relationship now? She's going, I'm going to find myself. And so it's a different dynamic that kind of starts to happen, which I find fascinating.
Absolutely is. And I would encourage people, if you're in that realm, is support your partner. Mm. Yes, find yourself. Yes. You know, and it goes both ways. Yes, okay, you know what? Sometimes we have to get out of the other person's way to allow them to experience these things. Okay, fine. Yeah. You're going to be the caretaker now, or you're going to be the person that goes off and does this or does that or whatever. But support each other and communicate. And don't allow the falsehood of the scorecard. Don't let that dictate your actions. Don't keep a scorecard, please. Please. We all do this. I've done this, and this, and you've only done this. Don't do that. It's not going to serve anybody. You know, it only serves that little self, the ego that goes, see, there it is again. There's another one. There's another one. I'm just tick, tick, tick. Just let it go.
Yeah.
Just let it go. You know what? In the end, it will all pay off, and it'll all balance, and it'll all equalize. So there's no point. You're just doing work that you don't need to do.
Yeah. And as you bring that up, you know, as we're raising kids, we don't say to, you know, a 5-year-old, do you know, I carried you in my stomach for 9 months and I fed you this many hours in the middle of the night and I lost this many hours of sleep and I fed you this much baby food, and we don't keep a scorecard for our kids. We don't create an IOU. and we willingly serve them. And we serve them and we serve them and we serve them well past adulthood, where we continue to go, how can I support you? How can I help you? And it's the most unconditional love that we give is with our own children. And to do that within a relationship with a partner, and you might be going, well, they're not my child, I don't have to raise them. But ultimately, yes, we're all adults in these adult bodies, but we're all children on the inside. We all have inner child.
And we're all raising each other.
Yes.
In relationships, in community, we're all contributing to each other's lives.
Yeah.
And we're all adding, I hope, benefit to each other's lives. Yeah. And that growth. We all owe it to each other. We all don't owe anything to each other. So.
Yeah. And so to me, it's to serve your partner as you would serve your children. It's to love your partner as you would love your children. That, you're not freaking out on a 3-year-old because you have to do their laundry. So why are we freaking out on the husband because we have to do his laundry? It's there's an equalization that just happens of, I want to take care of you. I want to serve you. And
you could take that a little farther, and I might ruffle feathers, but I mean, nobody says, God, you owe me. Well, maybe people do. A lot of people do.
No, I was going to say a lot of people say, God,
okay,
you
but
owe me.
There's I go to church every week. I do this. I do that. Da, 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 da. I'm owed this. I'm owed this. Well, where does that? Again, you're the one creating this.
Yes. Well,
not any.
I'll share from my own personal experience that I had this big idea in my mind that if I was a good person, good things would happen to me. And if I was a bad person, karma would catch up to me and bite me in the ass. So if anything bad happened, I was looking and going, where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? What did I do that was bad that created this kind of reaction? And then I had a realization, and it's been a whole lot of realizations and unpackings, because my idea around God was that God was a very punishing kind of force in the sky looking at me to sin. And when I sinned, bad things would happen, whatever. And really, I was personalizing every single thing that was happening in life as being a result of what was good and what was bad, of every single action I took, thinking this is a consequence of the good, or this is a consequence of the bad. So when the bad things happened, I thought, how horrible am I as a person? And it was such a bullshit lie, because it rains whether you're good or bad. It doesn't matter if you're making good choices or bad choices. If you're outside and there's weather that's weathering, it's going to weather on you. It's just the way it is. It's not personal. And I had to take that personalization away from the idea of God. Not you owe me, or good things should only happen to me because I try and be a good person, or that person should have bad things that happen to them because they've done these bad things or whatever. It's not up to me to decide. It's not, I don't even feel like God is going, hey, do you see her down there? She just said the F word, so, strike her with lightning. It doesn't work like that.
Can you imagine? So what, God's keeping a scorecard too?
Well,
so we're keeping a scorecard going, okay, this is how many times I've asked for help and you haven't helped me, and God's going, yeah, this is how many times you messed up. Come on,
yeah. But literally, that's what my brain was kind of programmed to believe, was that every action would cause a reaction. And so if the reaction was not one that was favorable, it was because something was inherently wrong with me. And so I was spending all this time trying to fix myself, when it was really, I just had to lose that belief that I was going to be punished, or that there was a scorecard that was taking place. And funny enough, I was the one to keep the scorecard of all of the good action, bad action that everybody else was doing, and kind of basing my love and how I wanted to show up for them on that invisible scorecard that I was keeping. And it took a lot of undoing that, because it was all very ego-based, but I didn't even recognize at the time that it was very ego-based, or based on these beliefs and programs that I had been given about what it means to be in favor of God or not in favor of God.
So don't keep a scorecard. Acknowledge the contributions, good, bad, indifferent, and work off of those.
Yeah. Because ultimately, and he said this to me, I don't know how many times in our relationship, but ultimately you're on the same team. And when we start to keep a scorecard, it's like we're playing on different sides. And we're going, one of us is a winner and one of us is a loser. If you're in relationship, you're on the same team. You're both wanting to win together. And it's really a scoreless game. You know, it's not something that you're going to get a trophy for at the end, other than you're going to have this beautiful love between the two of you. And it's a trophy you can't hold or show off to anybody, but you can feel it in your hearts, you know, and that's ultimately, that's how we want to win in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't forget, folks, we want to hear from you. We do really want to make this a conversation. So, you know, if you have questions or the questions that you have, by all means, post them in chat, send a private message. We would love to hear from you guys. You are our community as we are yours, and we can only grow with each other.
Yeah. And if you guys have any ideas of topics that you'd like us to discuss, if there's, you know, yeah, okay, that might work in your relationship, but this is what our relationship is looking like right now, and these are all the problems we have. By all means, send that in to us, and we can discuss it in an anonymous way, to help you kind of unravel from whatever those issues might be that are in your relationships or with your communication or whatever. Ultimately, we want to help people build stronger, more conscious relationships, and it's we can only give from our own experience right now. So
exactly, and we need you to learn as you need us to learn, and vice versa. We all need each other, and it can only work if we're all conversating, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could get up here and talk again. I said this last time. We can talk and keep talking, but we'd like to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
I could get up here and sing, but I don't think you guys would like that. She's the singer.
I like his singing. I told him that yesterday.
I might dance or something, but even that's... So
you're a good dancer. So yeah, that's, I think, the end of this week's topic, but we will be back here next Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to chat about whatever is kind of coming up the most for us. And
or maybe we'll be talking about something that we receive from you guys. Maybe there's a topic that's really burning. That's like, whoa, what about this? What about these? Da, da, da. Send it in.
Yeah.
We love to dissect things. We love to have this discussion. We'll make it real. We'll make it live. We'll make it with each other. We'll put it into our own perspective of how we've done this or whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll live it. And then we'll come and talk to you about it.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us again this week, and we look forward to connecting with you next Sunday. Have a great night, everyone.
Take care.